It's my pleasure to introduce Agata Cieszewska, and who's the assistant professor in the Department of Landscape Architecture at the Warsaw University of Life Sciences. She received both her MS and her PhD in geography at the University of Warsaw. So, although she teaches in the landscape architecture program, her academic background is in geography and probably more specifically in landscape ecology. She was a Kosciuszko Foundation Scholar at Arizona State University in 1998. Was a visiting scholar here last year at the University of Texas. She's currently a Fulbright Scholar here at UT, but in the time that she's been at UT, she's also taken a trip to the East Coast where she gave lectures at the University of Massachusetts and the University of Pennsylvania, and is leaving next week for the Pacific Northwest, and it's going to be, and you're going to be talking at Portland State?
No, but he's representing for Greenbelt Alliance, which is
So we'll be giving talks in the Midwest. That's one of the benefits of Fulbrights. They in addition to the residency, they also fund participation in conferences and those kind of things. She's very active in Poland in a lot of planning activities, mostly relating to environmental planning, both in Warsaw and other cities in Poland. She's also prepared conservation plans for 4 regional parks. Currently, her research is focusing on the structure and function of greenbelts within metropolitan areas, and it's specifically has done a lot of work on European greenbelts in particular. So, welcome.
So it's a big pleasure for me to be here in front of you today. Especially, I'd like to thank you because I know how busy you are before the end of the semester, and I know it's probably kind of difficult moment for you to go for this lecture about exotic Warsaw. I think it's from completely different part of the world. And but still, I would like to share with you some remarks about what's going on in our city. And of course, to say a few words in the beginning about green infrastructure, probably you are quite well prepared about it. But still, I would like to point out that we are talking about some different aspects of the green infrastructure. Sometimes we are more focused on the idea, sometimes more about the elements, about objects, sometimes about function, quality, or tools. So all those elements we are combined in this big nation of in this big term as a green infrastructure. We also used to use different scales. So about there are different elements when we are talking in the site scale. There are completely different elements when we are talking about the green infrastructure about the regional scale. And today I would like to show a bit both from Warsaw. I thought it would be kind of interesting to show how it works in both approaches. And also I would like to point that about green infrastructure we can understand it a bit different when we are thinking about existing elements of the landscape or planning elements of the landscape. Sometimes we combine both things, but sometimes we are more dedicated to one of it, one aspect. The same with, so when we are thinking about existing elements, we are more focused about preserving, about the preservation, how we would like to preserve those elements. When we think about the planning of new elements in the landscape, we are more thinking about the creating. And sometimes also when we are thinking about talking or making a plan about the green infrastructure, we are more focused on natural landscape, natural aspects of the surrounding, and sometimes we are more concentrated on cityscape. And I think in states, so the examples which I saw already, they are more focused on this right left side, about the creating of new elements in the cities which are very, very dense. And probably it's not in all, and especially in the regional scale. Of course, it's more about the natural landscape, about existing elements. But still, I think it's sometimes we are more on the right side or more on the left side. And Poland is an EU country, and as an EU country, we have to follow the rules of EU. And one of the important laws is related to the definition of green infrastructure, and I think a few elements it would be nice to underline. So for EU, it's definitely planet network. So it's not only the green ecological structure which we have already, but we think about it as a kind of new element in the landscape. And it's combined of both natural and semi-natural areas and also other aspects, so not only green stuff as the term says to us, so also other environmental features as beach, which is not actually green cover, but it still could be understood as a part of green infrastructure element or rocks. And what is also underlined is that it brings some benefits for people, so it's delivered ecosystem services. So it's also a bit different perspective to planning aspects, even environmental planning in the city, for example. And it's also underlined that it's present in rural and urban cities. So not only in the city, but we have to remember to work with out of the city and the relation between both of them. How it's influenced our approach to ecosystem services, I think it's for planners especially not so easy to understand, because up to now, when we were talking about zoning, which are fundamental for environmental also planning, we thought about, we used to use the language of functions. And functions doesn't mean exactly the ecosystem services. So it's not so easy to combine those elements, because when we are more focused about the benefits from ecosystem services, they are not directly reflect the functions which we used to use when we make a plan. So these are kind of my intro to my own understanding of green infrastructure, which probably is most of us problem, because everybody has a bit different understanding of this term. And of course, because I would like to focus on Warsaw, I think that few words on the beginning about our structure of the city. We have two main elements which influence the landscape of Warsaw. One big element is Vistiula Valley. It's a big river, one of the biggest in Europe. So it's influenced the city a lot. It's a divided city on one hand, and on the other, it gave some possibilities for the infrastructure in it. And also Warsaw Escarpment, which is the slope from 12 to 20 meters, quite steep as you see. And it is also divide Warsaw on this part which is located in the valley, and this part which is located above the valley. So it's also give us those information how the city is located. And I thought that it would be cool to combine Warsaw and Austin to give you more easier understanding what's going on in Warsaw. So you see that the Austin is a bit bigger. Why we have double inhabitants in Warsaw? So it is we can suspect that the city itself is supposed to be much more dense. What kind of dense? I will show in density test. I will show in a moment. And you can see that in metropolitan area the inhabitants are quite common. So it means that in Austin we have much more people in the metropolitan area, while in Warsaw, for example, we have much more people concentrated within the city border. And when I start to talk about the city form of Warsaw, I have to start about the war. Because the war changed the urban form of Warsaw a lot, especially what was happened in 1944, where it was the Warsaw Uprising. And during that time, Warsaw was completely bombed. So all the people have to, 2 million people have to go out from the city totally, my grandma also, and with 2 little kids and so on. So it was kind of a complicated story. But but how much it was bombed. There are two plans, one is from 1939 and another is from 1945, to show what was, how it was Warsaw before the war and what was happened after the war. So it's an old map, that's why it's not so good quality, but still I think it's a bit visible. So you can see that burned buildings, those pink colors, and those brown demolished buildings indicate that over 80% of all buildings were completely destroyed during the war. So can you imagine that 80% of the Austin, it's not exist, okay? And so what to do? The idea was when people when people came back after the well, kind of independence camp, of course, kind of independent because the Russian soldiers came, so it's a bit different story. I mean, also maybe would like to point that that the blue color show which part of the buildings haven't been destroyed, and look how it is between on both sides of the river. On the right side of the river, blue colors dominated, so buildings haven't been destroyed at all. Only on the left side of the river they were destroyed, because on the right side of the river the Russian troops were already, and they were waiting and watching what's going on the other side, which on the other side people were bombing totally, so it was kind of complicated story. So we are very nervous what's going on now in Ukraine, it's not so easy for us to understand. So what else? So how it's influenced the city form? Very different. So we have some parts of Warsaw, this left part which was destroyed after the war, like Old Town, because people when they come back, they would like to have at least a small part of the city which was the same, which give them some understanding of the site, some genius locale, that they are still in Warsaw, that it's not completely different place, they are still in Warsaw. Also in Rotterdam, which was completely bombed, a small part of the city was kind of rebuilt. They would like to protect it because they would like to keep it in the same shape. So we used to say that in Warsaw we have the newest old town in Europe. It's the UNESCO site, which preserved not the old fabric of the city, but it preserved how it was well rebuilt, that it was rebuilt so detailed. So all those Gothic town is still in the same shape, and when you will come to Warsaw, which I would like to invite you, of course, you will see the pretty nice old town, really in the same, more or less, how it was before the war. But what was happening in other part of the city? Actually, most of the city was very dense before the war, like in the many other European countries and cities, like in Paris, like in Berlin, like in London, and so on. And after the war, because we're supposed to create kind of workers' Eden, Eden for new worker class, it's supposed to change. We're supposed to change the neighborhoods. So what was proposed? Because of course the country was kind of poor, so it starts to, and of course it was important that the buildings, the new buildings, supposed to be like co-ops. So they started to build multi-story buildings where people were located. It wasn't their own buildings; they belonged to the government. But still, it was what kind of Eden we had there. So we can see that we have multi-story houses with a lot of green open spaces in between, which was public space. So we almost didn't have in the city private space. All the space belongs to public. So you can see that the urban form is really very different than in other cities. How it looks in the local site scale. So you can see that from this kind of neighborhoods, we start to have this kind of neighborhoods. Maybe we can complain that they are a bit, not so perfect and so on, but playground, in public playgrounds everywhere, where you can go out from this multi-story building and sit outside and so on. So it's also give some green spaces to the city. So it's bring us to the completely different situation when we have a different urban forms than the other parts. So I think that now you're prepared to jump to the land use structure and understand it quite well. So you can see that we have residential areas in Warsaw which cover about 28%, but the domination is multifamily housing. Again, a big difference with American cities. when you have predomination of single-family housing. Single-family housing are located only in those areas which were kind of old villages, and later on they were transformed into the single-family neighborhoods. But the main part of the city is built of multi-family housing. Even the big neighborhoods like that, they are located out of in the outskirts of the city. Then you can see that we have still a lot of agricultural land, like over 20%. Besides arable land and meadows, I would like to point also the allotment gardens, a new element in American cities, as I could see. I mean, the kind of community gardens, which we had it also before the war, because it was we had this tradition in Europe. But after the war, of course, many people come to live in Warsaw from the countryside, and everybody would like to have a tiny garden. So a lot of allotment gardens occur after the war also in Warsaw. What kind of green areas? Well, parks and other squares, of course, inside the city, but outside of city, there are mostly forests and woods. Altogether, 80% of Polish forests they are state forests. Again, completely different situation than in many places. Also, most of those forests are open to the public. They are public forests, and some other industrial services and so on. Okay, so what about the green open spaces? About green open spaces, you can see that 30% are allotments. It means because they are green, like forests and parks, plus, for example, allotment gardens, which cover altogether about more than 3% of the city. So it's really, there are plenty of them. And domination is of the forest, then parks, and the third point is allotments. And so what kind of possibilities we have to create the green infrastructure? The possibilities are related with, as I told, different urban fabric. So open space within the city over 40%. When I talk about it with Professor Daniels from TEN, he told me, that's completely different than here. Here maximum is about 20. So it's so the structure is really kind of different. We have about over 20% of green open spaces, kind of low density of building areas, but they are multi-story houses with a lot of public space. And we have quite a lot of natural valuable areas. We have 8 nature reserves within the city, and also Natura 2000 sites. Natura 2000 is a common conservation category for whole the EU, and also it's located exactly in Warsaw. So if I would like to say what we are thinking, how we are thinking about green infrastructure in Warsaw, we are more thinking about existing elements which we have already, about to preserve it as well as possible, and more about the natural landscape than about the creation. So a bit different perspective we have than in other cities. Actually, the green infrastructure it's a kind of new term, but you know. It's also, we have many old connotations, so it's not totally new. I think it's more like a new way to communicate with architects, or sometimes with planners. And it's not that old as we think. And in Warsaw, we used to have this kind of term like urban natural system, which we created the first for the plans in 80s. It's the first appeared in plans in 80s, and then of course it's developed itself as an idea. But in the last plan from 2010, it's also occurred. Okay, so how we used to make it? During last 2, I was a bit involved, so of course I know how it works. And the first step was the understanding the urban structure, and to see where we have those environmental processes which are really important for us. I will explain it in a moment. Then in the next step, it was important to show the key areas. So not only understanding all the processes, but where we have the key areas that perform natural processes, And from the second step, the first step here with urban natural system proposal. So how we understand it? There's environmental processes which are important for us. They were those processes which mitigate those phenomena which are typical for many landscapes. So we are trying to figure out where we have too fast runoff, where we can make a reduction of groundwater infiltration. I mean, where is the problem with reduction of groundwater infiltration? Where we have a problem with air exchange, both horizontal and vertical, because in the city particular, the vertical air exchange is extremely important. And where we have a problem with biological active areas, so where these green areas disappear. So we understand it as those four group of processes, from geodynamic, hydrological, climatic, and ecological. And why those processes were important for us? Because we would like our goals were to stabilize the geodynamic processes, to regenerate the water resources, to keep the airflow and air regeneration, also to limit non-natural runoff if it's possible, to protect the connectivity between the green open spaces, to keep the biodiversity, and to protect the biological active areas. So again, more this preserving aspect than creating. And of course, using the GIS, we had those three subsystems with climatic subsystem, hydrological, and ecological one. So we have for the city the map with the areas which are important for vertical and also horizontal air exchange, and also areas important for air regeneration. For hydrological subsystem, we have the map with information where we have areas with permeable surface, so where we have so-called hydrological windows, where we have areas that can slow runoff somehow, and also we have those ecological subsystems, so areas important for biodiversity with mature ecosystem, this dark green here, and biological active areas, and also those areas which are well connected. And all those three bring us to the urban natural system, which was, of course, there was some assessment method done to choose which area will be in, which not, and why, and so on. But its influence, it's bring us to the situation when this urban natural system starts to be the special policy for Warsaw. We've kind of, maybe you know one of those terms, so eco-spatial index, yes, or green plot ratio, or green space ratio. So it's influenced directly the spatial planning. So for the planning side, from part of Warsaw, you can see that we have those three elements, and then on the end we have the map of guidelines, and those guidelines, which we would like to look at this, how they are explained. First they explain some information about the zoning, so areas proposed to recreation without build-up permission, with build-up permission, or dedication to residential or commercial building. And also we propose for different areas different minimal green plot area ratio. So it's not environmental plan as you have here usually, which are much more detailed, with some proposals which go much more closer to the designing process. But those kind of guidelines which we used to have environmental so-called precondition study, which is the part of the planning process. So now a few pictures how it works, and this is the main. Maybe not green that much, but blue axis of the city, so Vistiula River, which are huge Natura 2000 sites along one of the bank. And you can see that levees, yes, they are on the a bit further. So what does it mean? It means that from time to time, this lower terrace is completely flooded. And it means that it's not the same how we can use it even as a recreation site, because first it's a wildlife sanctuary. Second, we cannot have so many stable recreation infrastructure because it's planned from time to time, at least twice a year. And also, this is the second element that influenced the structure of the city the most, so the Warsaw escarpment, and also it's kind of green element throughout the city because of the steep slope. It's very difficult to change this, to change it, and it's still green after all. And so, what did we do in this wildlife sanctuary within in the city center, actually, in this Natura 2000 site? On one hand, it's we would like to make it open for the public. For many years, it wasn't. There were no any path inside. The problem occurred because people, if they have the valuable natural area within the city, they don't treat it as valuable elements until they don't use it. So the problem was that we started to think how can we make it more open to the public. And one of our colleagues, who is a landscape architect in the city, he proposed this little path, which is very simple. Of course, unpaved, and there is no any other elements in it. It could be even easy to be flooded, and after flood, it can be repaired very easy. And it's used all year round. People love it. People go in winter, in summer, spring, bikers, people on cross-country ski runners, and it's long like 10 kilometers on one way, but you also can use the other bank of the river. So altogether, it's a kind of loop of 20 kilometers with crossing of the bridges. And so now it works pretty well. And you can see that it's bring the situation that people start to use the river. And it's also a kind of common trend in the world now. And in many places we can see that cities which usually were inversed from the river were used for many years as especially communication, transportation system. Then when it's the usage of the river gone a bit, many cities were kind of inversed, and also Warsaw. And now those little elements, even those little paths, brings the possibility, brings the ideas. Okay, so let's make some public pitch, and so now we have 4 of them in Warsaw, and really people start to use Vistiula a lot. Another one important element, which I think is kind of important, is allotment gardens. And you can see that they are just inside the city. And the challenge is to make them, again, more public. So they would be more open, not only for those people who rent to those little gardens, but also those people who live in the neighborhood. So how to transmit them a bit to be more public spaces. And they are not only used by people, but also by wildlife, moose, which we have close to Warsaw in National Park, and it sometimes comes because, for fresh fruits, everybody loves cherries. So. And we have also this trend with urban agriculture, which occur in some places, and also we have honey in the Hyatt Hotel, and so there are in many places now in Europe and also in States. It's kind of popular to have to have beehives in the city because it's secure that they are quite okay. So one example, or maybe 2 little examples of a good implementation of green infrastructure. I think the best is library of University of Warsaw. It's a so-called green library because not only the copper, which is used, but also because it's just green. How it is green? It is the project of Professor Marek Budzejski, our professor from Polytechnic of Warsaw, and landscape architect Agata Cieszewska, and they made together the plan with a huge roof garden. So all the garden of the building is covered by the roof is really green, and And also they combine it with the park, which is entire part of the library, which is located in the lower elevation, and it's next to Vistiula, so Vistiula is actually here. It looks very nice. It of course combines many different elements of green infrastructure, like rain garden, collection of all the water from the plot, green roof, green walls, promotion of native plants, and green public space. So all those things in one space. And probably we have in States, in Germany, or in France, or in other countries. We can see this kind of examples of green infrastructure. And it is, as I told, located close to the Vistiula River, and next to is built a new public building as well, so-called Copernicus Science Center. It's also a similar good example of green infrastructure implementation, with, which was made just a few years ago, also with green roof, which is not finished yet. But the big, nice park, not maybe big open space, but still some green open space it's next to. And again, it's changed a bit what's going on along the river. We had here a similar situation like in many American cities, when you have the highways or motorways even along the rivers. And also it's built on the tunnel, so it is the motorway here. It's hidden here in the tunnel. So it's kind of I think kind of typical example which you can see in other places. And some close-up. Okay. So I start. I present actually the possibilities, the challenges. I mean, how it's what kind of good elements we have to have a good green infrastructure in Warsaw. But we have some problems. Probably one of the most important problems now is public space disappearing. I'm not sure if I can call it tax rate, but ground tax rate. Yeah, it's probably one of the big problems, because nobody thinks that a ground tax rate could change a lot in this situation. How it works? So all those new or old neighborhoods now, in many places, people pay quite high ground tax rate, and it doesn't have change if it is still public, or if it is fenced. So of course, many people would like to fence. Maybe not because they feel unsafety, because some research was done about it, and it seems that people feel very safety now. So they do it because they pay for it, and they would like to have it for their own, on my background, on my backyard. Yes, so they don't want to share it with the neighbors, with people from other neighborhoods, and of course children don't like it at all. So it's difficult to say that it's really for safety, and look how it is. It's really a problem. So it's one of the big problems now in Warsaw. So all those elements which were really, I think, positive in our landscape, so there's a lot of public spaces now kind of disappearing. And another problem is with leaking planning system. So this is a map of those urban natural system, and those black dots are the planning permission during from last 3 years. So you can see that that also we how it's possible if we have urban natural system, how it's possible that it is so leaky. It's a problem because there is no master plan for the site, for the neighborhood, for the area, for the part of the city. The planning permission, the build-up permission is given by a local officer, and it's not necessarily supposed to be in line with special policy. So if there is a master plan, they have to follow the rules. If there is no master plan, okay, the local officer is saying, you can have a house there, even if it's not proper place. So this is kind of problem. So I think it's probably the bigger problem in Warsaw now, with this kind of leaking planning system. And now I would like to move you a bit to the different, again, different perspective, to look at this from the metropolitan point of view. And Warsaw is not big metropolitan area, but actually the term is also very tricky. In states, metropolitan area, you can have with the cities with 15,000 inhabitants, in India with 4 million. So it's, you know, for us, metropolitan area means very different things. And but I would like to point maybe that it's a bit different than in Poland in general. So we have a bit less of forest in the surrounding of Warsaw. We have a bit more farmlands, and our population here is, I mean, again, the question of the metropolitan area is always a big issue. Also in Europe, where you have some statistical data that's supposed to be calculated in different forms, and then the city indicate the metropolitan area again with the different borders. Always the problem, you know, how we calculate it. So what's going on in the surrounding of Warsaw? We have one national park, which is kind of unique. Also in Vienna, we have national park, which is next to the city. And we have two regional parks and this main river corridor, ecological corridor, but also some others, mainly related to the rivers. And what probably I would like to point, we have those 40% of the area in the region, in the metropolitan area, are protected, but only 10% actually of protected areas have compulsory protection plans. It again means that we have some protected area, but only 10% of this area has real protection. So it shows also the kind of problem, what kind of problem we have in the city. Of course, it's a different story with a national park with very strict regulation, not regional park or Natura 2000 or other forms of protection. It's much more complicated. So the moose area is in this national park, and when you live in here, you can meet the moose there. Actually, you have deers in many neighborhoods in Austin, so it's not that far. So what was our planning tradition with those metropolitan area? In 1934, we have the first plan of maybe not big Warsaw plan, but it's called functional Warsaw plan, where they took into consideration what going on in the surrounding of the city. They pointed the airflow wedges or airflow corridors, which were used for many, many years. And still they are kind of written in the plan. It's a kind of special policy. Then also they indicate kind of polders in floodplains. So floodplains were not built up for many, many years. Even today they are kind of open spaces still. And after the war, where many forests were destroyed, one of our professors, Professor Plakis from the architecture department, he proposed the forest belt around Warsaw to keep on one hand, environmental function. Still, I would like to point that this airflow were kind of important to keep the airflow corridors in Warsaw, so the air regeneration were important. That's why they proposed those belts, plus recreational function as well. In 1971, one of the important acts occurred, which you have also similar act to protect some good soils, and also secure the act that protect the good soils with some limited building permits. And but what's also important, all the forests around the cities, over 50,000 inhabitants, in a radius of 10 kilometers, they start to be dedicated to forest. It means that they are not for timber production anymore. That the main function is recreation. So it's the question is who's supposed to pay for this recreation? I mean, who's supposed to pay for the infrastructure? Because they're supposed to have some. It works after all. I would say that around Warsaw we have 700 kilometers of nature trails. So it's worked quite well. So it was the time of central planning. In 1989, we changed the situation. I mean, we were in the same borders of Poland, but everything was changed, of course. And new problems occurred. The first, the decrease of regional planning. So more crucial started to be local planning because of the decentralization. So the legal law for the land occurs in master plans. So the special plans for the city or for parts of the city start to be just a special policy. So it's not, they are rather guidelines, then the law. The law is written in the master plan. And it's in the master plan, it doesn't need to bring all the regulation from the special plan. So it's make the situation kind of complicated. And the second stuff, it's common in many countries. So intensive development of suburbs, particularly after 1989, because again of the decentralization process, and the local governments start to give those planning permission or build-up permission. So it's occurred that in the surrounding of Warsaw, little or single-family houses just start to appear. And also in the same moment, we got some positive elements of environmental planning trends, new trends. The first, I think, the benefits, environmental benefits in planning process. So we start to, the environmental plans start to be more important for the planners, and they treat it more seriously. And the second thing, which is also kind of important, I mean, especially for younger generation, it's so obvious that we have environment in the city. For many years, it wasn't like that. For many years, I mean, we have environment out of the city and the city. And people didn't realize that we have natural processes in them, that they are, something is happening with water. We would like to make it for people, that's all, but people didn't realize that we have the environment within the city, or nature in the city. And it's changed a lot in this more or less time, 80s, maybe some elements occur earlier, some later, but still it was something like that. And how it influenced Warsaw. This is typical structure of the fields around Warsaw. Warsaw, in 19th century, all Poland was divided into three parts: Russia, Austria, and Germany. It haven't existed for over 100 years. And Warsaw area was in Russia. And in Russia, in that moment, we have, we have very preserved agricultural structure. There were narrow strips of the pieces of land. Each one belongs to a different farmer. Very nice, as you can imagine, to work on it. And how it's reflected the urban fabric. Today we can see that developers, they don't buy from different farmers the land, but they buy it from one farmer. And they build, they conserve the structure of the agricultural land in city form. So we'll have the very interesting city form in a few years, because we will have not the city in form of the city, but the city in form of fields. And you can see that it's influenced not only by bigger developments, bigger developments here, but also in those tiny single family houses, which are built separately as well. It's a big problem, because they would like to save as much money as it's possible, of course. So there is not enough space for snow, for example. And in our climate, we have snow. Do you know what's going on? All the snow have to go outside of this part, because there's no place, there's no front yard. There's no place to leave keep the snow in winter. So it's kind of complicated story. And of course, we don't like it. So our urban sprawl is very strange, and it's I must say it's a complicated story. So that's why I started to work on Greenbelts. That's why it started to be important for me. So I intended it as both structure, so kind of system of open spaces that form the limit urban sprawl, the limit urban sprawl. But also, sometimes people understand it as a green corridor. In Austin, you have Greenbelts, which is like green corridor more than the system of open spaces that form this limitation of urban sprawl. And also, I understand it as a tool, as a planning instrument. And I had the possibility in 2006 to join the team that work on Metropolitan area plan, and I had the possibility to propose kind of elements of Greenbelts in that. So what we do, we use the method of suitability. So we had different GIS maps, like ecological network, with some potential for the connectivity. Then we made the map of suitability for recreation, suitability for agriculture. We collided with development pressure, and on the end we proposed, okay, those areas are more suitable for Greenbelt. So they are more proposed to keep them open, to limit urban sprawl. And we have, of course, some gaps. So if you would like to have it more constant, we have to figure out what to do with it. If you would like to keep it like that, probably it will be the easiest situation to keep those open spaces still open and not to allow the urban sprawl to occur in those greeny areas. So in the areas where we have the best soils, and in the areas which are the most suitable for recreation, in the areas where we have the which has the best connectivity for the ecological network, and where we don't have this special, this very important, this very strange and strong pressure of development, because it's also kind of important. Already there is a development pressure, probably it won't be possible to keep it open. But if not, okay, so we have this kind of proposals. But it was just the beginning of my research about the Greenbelts, because I knew not so much about it before. So I started, in 2012 occurred a new strategy for Poland with suggestion that we supposed to create for metropolitan areas Greenbelts. What was the purpose? What were the goals? To mitigate negative impact of urban sprawl, to protect ecological valuable areas and ecological connectivity. So it's not exactly like Greenbelts in the literature, when we also have just open spaces, not necessarily green open spaces, but here it's more ecological trend. But before that time, I got a grant to make some research about Greenbelts, and I focus on, I start with over 50 of Greenbelts in the world, and I start to read about it, to search it, and so on. And I think that today it's very difficult to say that they are Greenbelts. Probably they are all Greenbelt-like structures or Greenbelt-like strategies, which we have in planning, but they have different forms. So sometimes they are continuous, like in Greenbelts. Sometimes they are wedges, so we have green wedges, like in Stockholm or in Melbourne, we have also wedges. Sometimes it's a green heart, like in Netherlands, in so-called Randstad, so in Amsterdam, Rotterdam, and Hague, they have green open spaces, they call it green heart. And they use the policy also to limit the urban sprawl. But also in Haifa region, in Israel, they have similar stuff. In a system of protected open spaces, so again, not a belt, not wedges, but protected open spaces, like in Berlin, for example, or in Rome, in some places, people also call it Greenbelt. People say, it's a Greenbelt, like in London. So, it's kind of complicated again with playing with terms. And ecological network, like in Frankfurt or in Rome, they have a big ecological network, they call it Greenbelt, and they say that they would like to protect it because of limitation of urban sprawl. And of course, in many places in states, you have urban growth boundary, which is also kind of instrument which is used to control the urban sprawl, but actually it doesn't make a special form. It's rather boundary that's the special form. So then I was trying to figure out to think about functions of Greenbelts, and from the literature I found many information about it, and also from the plans which were made for many local cities. Like I divided into those 7 aspects, like structural function, so to check the future growth. The feeding function, which preserves farmlands, preserving forests, so all those elements which can feed the city. And environmental function, so to preserve natural environment, flood protection, this kind of stuff. Ecological one, so to keep green corridors, to have night veggie conservation. Recreational one, and landscape, so visual, I suppose to call it, maybe it will be better even. To have this landscape protection and restoration, to preserve special character of rural areas, little towns, especially in Great Britain. Actually, it was one of the reasons why they set the Greenbelts in UK. It was one of the most important elements, because they would like to keep countryside as a countryside. Because in most of English people from the gentry, from manor houses in the countryside, they come to the city for winter, but they would like still to have a place, for hunting. So it's probably it was very important also to keep it as it is. and those places for waste development sites, local facilities, local cost housing, and so on. And then I was trying to have a look, okay, can we translate it into the ecosystem services? So partly it's secure that it's possible. So I think sometimes it's quite relevant. And then I decided to focus on 10 greenbelts in 10 greenbelts-like instruments and 10 greenbelt strategies in Europe. In Europe because they are more similar to Poland, also because we have common data using for GIS. Also, we have different approaches, different structures, what kind of structure we can have. And how they are? Very different, very different. So we have some belts, we have some wedges, some open spaces, and green part. When we add some information, it will be easier for us to come out how it is. And you can see, okay, the problem is that sometimes city is rather big, sometimes, like in Paris, city limits, it's very, very tiny. And sometimes, like in Vienna, we have or in Frankfurt, the Greenbelt is almost in the city. Sometimes, like in Rome, or in Manchester, or in Stockholm, it's predominantly out of the city. So it was my first problem, okay, how can I use the GIS if I have so many different approaches? I mean, it's kind of complicated how to make this kind of stuff. And also I had so many research questions, some of them they are like that. Mainly, do we have landscape structures suitable to set a greenbelt? Many people ask me in Poland, if it's not too late to have a greenbelt. Are there specific land cover, maybe categories which are related to greenbelt? I mean, as a geographer, it's interesting to have a look at this. Do we have maybe special set of features who are we supposed to indicate some ecosystem services? Maybe some of them they are more relevant to greenbelt functions than others. So what I did, I decided to focus not on greenbelt itself in their border because it was not possible. They were so different, and also the structure was so different. But finally, I focused on the buffer zone around 20 kilometers, in a radius of 20 kilometers. Again, not from the city border, but from the built-up areas, from dense urban fabric, which we also indicate by land cover. And I have those 3 elements of data. So I have land cover, marine land cover, which is common for EU. I have the elevation model and nature protection areas, which is this Natura 2000 site for all the Europe. And it's cover about 20% of each city, of each country. So it should cover really a lot of areas, and most of important natural areas are under this protection in EU. And I decided to combine it. I have a very nice colleague who is GIS magic woman, and she made all my dreams comes true. So start with land cover. You can see those densities, and wow, they are so different. They are not so close. We think that okay, the surrounding of the city will be common. Not that much. So you can see that around Stockholm it's completely forested. In Frankfurt also many some forests. In Vienna it's only on one side. And in Randstad, in this green part, it's not pretty green, it's mainly agricultural land. So, it was the first glimpse was, I mean, it's different when you watch it one after another, it's different when you get the simplified models like this one. So then I tried to figure out, okay, so what kind of proportion of open spaces I have. So we can see that in this green Stockholm, again, let's jump to the previous one, it's the less amount of green open spaces. I mean, of open spaces in the city. The most this amount of artificial surface in this radius of the city fabric. In opposite to Randstad, which is supposed to be green heart, which is actually yellow heart, which is the agricultural part of the city of the Netherlands, but where we have really small amount of artificial surface, but it's not the green as we're supposed to have. So then maybe it will be easier to figure out how it works when we look at the function structure, when we look at agricultural surface, and you see that even in the same type, let's say, so wedges in Stockholm and Copenhagen, the differences are huge. And it's not that even in also in Frankfurt and Rome, the differences between them are really big. So I suspect, actually, I don't know if I suspect something very common, something more common. I think I didn't talk that greenbelts with some type, it's supposed to reflect the structure, but it's not reflected as much as I thought. Then I was trying to make the maps of different ecosystem services. So this is the map of provision service, where you have here this agricultural land, timber production, and so I used for those two I used the cover of forest, and then I make a minus of protected forest. Yeah? That's why I got the timber and production and protected forest, and so again, huge differences. Look at the regulation service. It was a complicated story because I had the area suitable to control erosion, so area with steep slopes but with stable land cover. Then we use the information about the flood control, so where we have those areas which are still open and which can be kind of folders for floods. We also use the information about which land cover is more suitable to keep the groundwater resources in good shape, let's say, and the same the area which will help to cool down the temperature in the surrounding of the city, to have this to protect the city from the partly at least from the heat island, so to have this airflow with to the city. So we have to cool down the temperature in the city surrounding. And then when we combine the map, we got the information. Okay, where we have higher relevancy to the regulation services, and were rather low. And again, when we look at the maps, okay, they are pretty irrelevant to the regulation service. Most of them, even those, let's say, yellow-green part, the same, and even with lack of public open spaces around Stockholm. So all of them seems pretty suitable to the regulation services. Then I did the map of habitat services. So we use the information about the biodiversity. We some of that Natura 2000 site are those areas where biodiversity probably is bigger, and then we made an analysis to serve the connectivity. It was not related necessarily with the Natura 2000 site, but rather with not natural elements in the landscape, and we got to this kind of map. And also we made the cultural service as recreation function, so also the information where we have more suitable areas to recreation areas than others. It occurs some problems. What kind of problem? This is an example of suitability for recreation. So in the literature, most of people say that green urban areas and agricultural land are very suitable for recreation. Okay, if yes, the problem is that fields will be very suitable for the recreation. Are they really great for recreation? What about pastures? Some people say pastures are really fantastic. We can use that as a part of area important for recreation. Some people not. So it brings some problem. And to say the truth, there are many mismatches about what kind of land cover categories. Which kind of land categories we're supposed to treat as important for ecosystem services and which not. An example, our favorite Green Heart in Netherlands. Here you can have the situation when we have agricultural areas and forest and semi-natural areas important for recreation. Here there is a map where we remove fields, and here is the situation when we remove fields and pastures. Okay, so are they pretty correct? Which is not correct? I mean, it's also a big problem to try to calculate the ecosystem services for metropolitan area. Not only metropolitan area, I mean, all the ecosystem services, mapping ecosystem services is a really big challenge. And it brings me to the situation like this. So, of course, Dutch use it in the pastures to go by bike. I'm not sure if it's the same. So in the comparison of services, which function predominate? Blue one, regulation services. When we compare the biggest variation between Stockholm and Randstad, still a huge difference between them. And when I would like to sum up it somehow, I would say that this is the more crucial thing. That's regulation services. They are not visible in the goals. I mean, planners don't see still that they are important as a goal. So probably it will change with the problem of heat islands, with the problem with climate change, where when we'll start to think about climate problem more seriously. But still, when I look at the main goals, why this Greenbelt like structure are proposed, we can't see that this regulation services, so environmental function are really, really important. And then, of course, we did it for Polish cities, for 9 Polish cities, it is Warsaw, in different borders again with Metropolitan area. Now this is a law, so I have to do it in this one. And again, a big question. Okay, so is it suitable to allotment? Is it a problem of the structure? Because usually people ask, okay, so what are we supposed to do? Are we supposed to make more wedges or Greenbelts? Of course, it's not a polycentric, so not really hard, but maybe a system of protected open spaces would be suitable. I mean, probably it's not a correct question. It's not a question of form, but because it's a question more about special policy. But still, I think that we can look at this with many possibilities. What we can propose for this kind of city like Warsaw. So, as a coming to conclusion, I think that the first we have different structures of those Greenbelt like instruments, and it doesn't mean that it's necessarily supposed to be continuous. So don't be afraid to propose the Greenbelt in many different places. It's never too late to propose a Greenbelt, because if not this element suits, maybe another one can be useful. Again, what about the proportion? I think that this one was quite kind of crucial. So don't think about green belts as a green open spaces, because it's open space. It doesn't necessarily supposed to be green. So open spaces in most of the in all of those examples are around 70 to 90%. In Warsaw, it's 87. So it's so the crucial aspect is how much open spaces we have, not how much green open spaces we have. It's not the same as in the Netherlands. And again, those green open spaces, it's sometimes cover a very small area, like in Randstad. Green open space in the Greenbelt is 10%. So it's says how green it is, and in Stockholm could be 52. And again, from the land use structure analysis, I must only say that there is no direct relation between those types and land use structure, and that it's much more reflection is to the suburban or peri-urban characteristic than to those particular ideas, particular tools of green belts. Okay, so I think it's time for me to